It seems to me like we should have a couple more girls join, though.
Well,
if we're going to do this properly. And
Kimberly's going to have to represent.
I'm kind of wishing you guys had a real girl on here, because I'm not going to be able to answer.
Hello and welcome to the Amateur Skeptics Podcast, number 74, Battle of the Sexes. Joining me this evening, sexist number 1, Ian.
What sex is sex number 1?
You're sexist number 1.
Okay, I'm sex number 1.
Sexist.
Cool. Sexist.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It wasn't endearing. Sexist number 2, Mac.
Winter is coming.
And the anti-feminist, Kimberly.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
And I'm all of the above, your host, Brian. How's everybody doing?
Doing
good. All right.
That intro seemed appropriate.
Yeah.
Right?
So, Brian, I guess you've got some news. The pitter-patter of tiny feet.
Yes. I am now an owner of a yellow-sided green-cheeked conure, just like Mac.
I actually haven't achieved the status of being an owner of one yet.
Oh, really?
I just happen to have one in the house that makes me do things.
Well, yeah.
I'm a parent.
Well, in a sense, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, it's like having, with these, like having a 3-year-old forever.
Yep.
So. But, like some of the bigger birds, the cockatoos and stuff like that, and my mom, if she had stayed in that pet store any longer, would have brought home a cockatoo.
Yeah.
That was a pretty neat bird, too. So, yeah, and,
I've seen that bird that you're talking about, and that is a well-loved bird.
Yeah.
And he is an adorable bird, but that's the thing about cockatoos is they just want to be snuggled.
Right.
They just want to be snuggled all the time. To my experience, at least, conures are very, very adventurous.
Yeah.
Green-cheeked conures are extremely adventurous.
Well,
and do not belong on the floor.
The instigation for all of this was Tatiana has been asking me for months now, can we get a bird? I want a real bird. And so her birthday was this month, and so I said, okay, let's go ahead and do it. So we did. And so she got a little cockatiel that is just gorgeous. And,
cockatiel.
Yeah, cockatiel. Yeah. And, there's a big difference. The cockatiel takes a little bit longer to break in. It's definitely not, as robust a bird.
Yeah.
But is a good one for Tatiana. So it's
going to be a good bird for her. She just needs to pay the right amount of attention to it and give it space when it needs and give it love when it needs.
So she, and the trick is, I just want her to, sit down and pet the bird, and give it love and, so that's what she's doing. And, the conures, different, it's like the cockatiels seem to be creatures of habit. So, you kind of have to, like, if you want to change their water dish, you have to put 2 water dishes in there at the same time. And once they start drinking from the other one, you can remove, the original water dish. Stuff like that.
Okay.
Where with the conures, they will adapt to anything you do to them.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned to you earlier that my bird, he likes to, well, actually I had this conversation with my parents earlier, never mind. But he likes to adapt to every other bird's food dish that happens to be available to him.
Sure.
And just check to see what's in there and, check to see if there's anything in there that they shouldn't have.
Right,
Like, for instance, pizza crust. If you give the birds pizza crust, he will invariably go and explore every cage and throw out every piece of pizza crust except his own.
That's funny. All right, Kimberly, have we given you enough time now? Are you ready to do the announcements?
You shouldn't need to wait on me. I'm all good.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the announcements.
Okay. Not too much going on for the end of the year and possibly the end of the world. But a couple of things before that happens. On Sunday the 16th, the Atheists for Humanity are having YouTube night number 3. If you've been to them before, they're awesome. Eric puts together a whole bunch of YouTube videos, and we raise some money for charity. It's awesome. It's going to be at the Walnut Room. Make sure you attend. On Wednesday the 19th, the Boulder Atheists are doing their Atheist Classroom, How the Christians Stole Christmas. And then, as we said, the end of the world is going to be happening the weekend of the 21st. So the Mile High Skeptics are having their end of the world party on Friday, and the Freethinkers of Colorado Springs will then be hosting a Mayan survivor party, assuming on the 22nd.
Yep.
And the only other one I've got on the schedule right now is on Sunday, December 30th. Free Thought Exchange is going to do their next event at Spirit Keepers Interfaith in Boulder. Don't know much more about it, but should be interesting.
All right. So we were contacted on Facebook by what is this? Tony Borer, and he told us he had, he liked our Facebook and asked us to check his out. And so it's 76th Street podcast. 70th Street. And so I listened to one, and I'm going to have to listen to another one because I don't know that, it might not have been their best show, but it was four guys just kind of sitting around talking. It was interesting. But the most interesting thing about them was their sponsor. They had a sponsor link so to get money, and it was through adamandeve.com, which I thought was really kind of a cool sponsor, because I have it on good authority that Dumbass doesn't often buy sex toys, but when he does, he uses adamandeve.com.
It's good to know.
Your appearances on his show must have different in format than the ones that I was on.
Yeah, maybe a little. Yeah. So anyway, I'll check them out a little bit more, but I thought their sponsorship link was quite entertaining. Thought that was cool.
Good deal. I've heard them sponsor stuff on like Savage Love, Dan Savage's podcast. I like to listen to.
Yeah,
they're a good company.
They also they sponsor this Sex Nerd Sonder podcast and some of the others too. So I've heard them sponsor other podcasts, but so I didn't, I saw the sponsorship and I'm like, well, what kind of podcast is this? But it turns out it was not a sex podcast. So, a little disappointing there, but I'll listen to some others and we'll see. Maybe some of the others are sexier.
Four guys sitting around talking, I'm not expecting to get very sexy.
Yeah, maybe not, yeah. All right, so Ian, tell me about the Battle of the Sexes.
Okay, well, the Battle of the Sexes is the ongoing thing. It's never going to end, but that's fine. But apparently, we have learned, thanks to Fox News correspondent, what's her name? Her name somewhere. Suzanne Binker, who apparently, actually, I guess she's not Fox News correspondent, but this is through Fox News that she wrote this. But apparently she's an expert on parenting and how to get a man and all this stuff. And I guess he went and did some research for books he was writing. And what she learned was that men don't want to get married. Apparently that's actually gone down. Less people get married now than used to. And the reason is apparently because women aren't women anymore.
Okay, I found this incredibly annoying. So what the basic claim is that because women have asserted themselves and they aren't the 1950s woman in the household, that stays at home, that's barefoot and pregnant, because they don't want to be those people anymore. Men don't want to marry them because women aren't women anymore.
Yeah.
Am I missing the point here?
This is Fox News, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Fox News, whose
yes.
target audience is folks in their 50s who are afraid of liberals. Is that the same Fox News that we're talking about here?
Yes,
because that's the only Fox News that I know of.
Well, there is Fox 31 here in Denver, right? But that's different.
Well, yeah, but we're talking Fox News.
Yes, we are. Yes. Are you saying consider the source?
I'm saying consider the source very carefully.
It might be relevant to the discussion you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying there may be a slight hint of relevance here, yes.
In a nutshell, women are angry. They're so defensive, though often unknowingly. Oh, really? What is that supposed to mean?
If it is saying that if they would surrender to their nature, their femininity, and let men surrender to theirs, men will come out of the woodwork.
Well, yeah, but so they're undefensively unknowingly. That's because they've been raised to think of men as the enemy, armed with a new attitude. Women are pushing men off of their pedestals.
Basically, women being assertive is not women being themselves, is what it ends up saying.
Right. They're not being docile.
Yeah, they're not being true to who they are if they are not sitting back and basically letting men completely control their lives. That's, to me, the end all of this. Now, some of this fits my wife's grandmother, who didn't work, raised the kids, and she even says stuff like she enjoys taking care of her husband and people in general. That to her, that's the main thing in life, is to take care of them. And,
Right.
I've always found it a bit odd with how much she actually does, even when she's at someone else's house. But that's how she was raised, and that's how, she's lived. But I don't see it being relevant today.
Well, okay. It's not a traditional America anymore.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
this is one article.
Hold on a second. What exactly is a traditional America?
Well, slavery.
Okay. Traditional America would also be
Women aren't allowed to vote. No women's
nomadic
suffrage.
Groups of tribesmen hunting buffalo.
No women's suffrage. No black suffrage. Right?
Well, Brian, you yourself have even said you really don't like the Institute of Marriage. You actually wouldn't have gotten married if you didn't have to for insurance reasons, right?
That's true. Yeah, I wouldn't have. And Jen, even more so than me, was
right.
Yeah,
and I know several couples where they're not married, but they don't want to get married. It has nothing to do with the woman not being a woman. It has to do with the men, with actually both sides wanting, I don't think it's quite accurate the way they see it, but they want freedom. And they see the marriage tying them down. But they'll live together, they'll share expenses, they have kids together, they do all the stuff that you traditionally put with the marriage, but they don't get married.
right. Well,
And they'll even go so far. I have a friend who charges his girlfriend rent and keeps on the books just to make sure they don't even get common law married.
You can
Sure.
do that.
Well, if you don't want to be considered married, if you're supporting another person, particularly a woman, I wonder what the common law statutes look like in that particular case.
But in this case, he can make quite clear, listen, she is independent of me. We are not together.
Right.
We have a kid together, we live together, but she pays her own bills, she pays everything. We're not a couple, we're not married. So.
But to be fair, a lot of my resistance towards marriage is, the kind of biblical religious connotations that go with it.
Right.
And so it's not, and it has nothing to do with commitment by any means.
Right, and that actually fits with the article you threw in here. The one,
Right,
don't
but
open the wife.
I don't know. I know. Are we done with this? I mean, this particular
it's
article.
linked.
I know,
To me,
but
it's linked.
this kind of stuff irritates the hell out of me. And and why does this always have to be proposed as a power exchange? Where it's either these things get framed as either men are on top or women are on top. And if women are on top, men feel like they don't have any power in this situation.
It's actually good either way.
What's that?
It's actually good either way. Women on top or men on top. Either way, it's actually
I like
good.
to switch around. Sometimes I'm on top, sometimes she's on top. It gives a little variety to it all.
Help me, Kimberly.
No, I am just, I'm observing. I mean, obviously I'm a little bit outside of this because my relationship does not really cross the gender line.
No.
And, and we've talked before about all sorts of stuff with same-sex marriage and my feelings on that and stuff like that. But I find this fascinating of how the discussion comes about and these generalizations, as if the person that you're going to be in the relationship with is some generalization. You're going to be with, married or not, an individual who's going to do things their own way. So I'm always just surprised at these sweeping kind of allegations. And, also to the point that you guys all already brought up, they seem to want to harken back to this, great day of American tradition and history that never really existed for everybody.
No, it did not.
It's mostly just nostalgia, right? For the current generation of people who are just now crotchety and angry and stuff like that. But
there are some
it's
facts.
just surprising to me that they think this is a discussion that could be somehow boiled down to men versus women. There's just so much more, I don't know, individuality that comes into it.
There are some.
So Kimberly, in your relationship, who's on top?
Again, we've got the switcheroo thing going on.
Right, but
and that keeps it fun.
Can I explore that for 1 second
you said
here?
Nathan Fillion was your switcheroo.
That's a switcheroo list. I might have used
different.
that out of context.
Okay, so here's the thing that I'd like to explore for 1 second, Kimberly, in that, so you're two females. So these old antiquated rules of what men are supposed to do and women are supposed to do don't apply. And you have to, and so your relationship automatically gets put onto equal terms. I mean, maybe not. Am I overstating it here? Because you're both women, so neither one of you is expected to be the head honcho.
I think I know where you're going with it. Yeah, and I mean, I do appreciate that about my relationship, that we are equals. We're equals in the relationship, and kind of we are outside of those equality or power expectations, maybe you'd say.
Right, because
who's the man in the family,
here.
who's the woman, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to do that. We get to make our own rules as to who's responsible for the dishes, who's responsible for the garbage. There's no, gender lines that make that decision for us. We had to make that ourselves.
And so, but don't you think that that's what men and women should be striving for? Instead of a power exchange, a cooperation?
I think that's what everybody would want.
Right. And I mean, certainly Jen and I have certain strengths, right? But not necessarily because I'm a man and she's a woman. I mean, but we each have our particular strengths that we have to yield to when the other person is better at a particular thing. And, which is why I do all the cooking. Yes, as my wife just reminded me. But there seems to me that there is an ideal here that we can strive towards. And it isn't, men taking care of women. It's people taking care of people.
Of each other, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why
Right.
I hate these kind of articles that make this all about the power exchange. And the other thing is that, my first impression of the thing is men really gotta grow the fuck up.
There are men that do. I agree with that completely.
I know, you want to move on to the other article now? I mean, I'm sorry, I
Well,
had to...
like I said, to me, Don't Be a Wife was linked into that. That's why I moved it up to that. Because, the idea of Don't Be a Wife, actually fits, both you and Jen and Kimberly and her partner.
Right.
It's saying that, it's from a lesbian, writing that she loves the fact that, marriage equality is happening, but she has no desire whatsoever to get married. It's just not for her. And I think more and more, as we are progressing as a culture, marriage is becoming less and less needed. And while it's great that now, we're getting more and more saying, listen, same-sex couples have the same rights as heterosexual couples, we still don't need to force them to get married. Because what she's saying is that once same-sex marriage became legal, suddenly all her friends are starting to ask, hey, when are you getting married? And she's like, well, actually, we don't really see the point in that. And so,
there's a point for some, and there's not a point for others. The point for some would be that same-sex marriage allows you to share benefits with a partner.
There's advantages both ways. It depends on what you desire. And, I think we'll be heading more and more into not needing to be married to get those rights. In fact, I think that's where we're headed. That'll actually be a good thing. That's where we should be headed.
But here's the thing, is that marriage roles and the ideas have to change as our culture changes, right? It cannot stay the same. It's like Bill O'Reilly's, comment about a traditional America. Well, we can say the same thing about a traditional marriage, right?
Oh yeah.
It cannot stay the same. We're an evolving people in an evolving culture, and we have to be okay with the ideas here changing. But there is a certain crotchety old white male perspective that doesn't want that to happen.
Right.
And it seems to fall back on those same lines that we always see of fearing change, and we all know that adaptability is the important thing. Like you say, in a culture in which women don't work, they would need to be, in general, of course, you would need some structures in life to make sure that they're taken care of, that they've got rights, that they've got financial, certainly not independence, I guess, in this way, but that they're taken care of, right? I mean, and when I say taken care of, in this particular case, it is talking about someone doing the taking care of, but in modern life, we kind of take care of our own stuff, right? We all have jobs to pay the bills, and you have to do these things to take care of your situation. But, so much stuff has changed, and so much of it is, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, economic in nature. It's, you can't have the same marriage structure when both people in the marriage are working. Like, that 50s ideal is based on single income families.
Right.
It made sense to some extent for single income families, but you rarely meet a single income family anymore. Therefore,
why?
It seems obvious to us that you have to change the dynamic then.
Yep.
You know why you don't see a single income family anymore? Because single income families do not have houses.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, so
single income family just simply doesn't work.
No, it's unrealistic too. I mean, we have to accept the fact that you both people in these relationships most of the time are going to have to work. Right. And even women, when they didn't necessarily have a job, were working their asses off. It's not like they were sitting at home and watching soap
I certainly
operas
don't want to get into being quoted as saying that if you don't have a 9-to-5 job, you're not working at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like I said, for me, it's more of an economics and, just the way society works. The economic reality for, again, most people is that you've got the dual income families, which means that both people are out of the house and bringing money in order to survive. You don't have the same dynamic anymore. And I always find it just annoying that, that Fox News kind of, like we said before, nostalgia machine, suggesting that, we should go back to that. It's ridiculous. It's just simply not an economic reality anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's not even a matter of choice, I think, for most people. It's just the way things are.
Yeah. I think the Fox News, I think that Fox News doesn't understand that Pleasantville was intended to be tongue-in-cheek.
All right. So the next thing we got in here is the 13-year-old girl asked Hasbro to end their sexist ad. This was pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, we've talked about gender roles in the past. We had the one, was it my Princess Son or whatever that the parents did
Princess
a book about?
Boy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this fit in great with that. What it is this one boy, he likes to cook, and he wants an easy bake oven. But the easy bake ovens are all straight out, commercially done for girls. All the promotions, everything is done targeted towards girls. And so his sister's basically upset with Hasbro with that, saying, listen, my little brother loves this stuff, but it makes him feel a little awkward because you guys don't seem to be marketing towards him.
Right, so she's set up a petition on change.org to get Hasbro to change their marketing.
I kind of like this comment down here from Moon Underwood, who's talking about the fact that essentially her point seems to be that to say that pink and purple are girl colors is actually perpetuating gender stereotypes of a different type. She's saying that pink and purple are not girl colors any more than blue and brown are boy colors.
I love to tell the girls that pink is a boy color. Because why shouldn't it be?
It's certainly not it's so cultural. It's not like, pulled out of a cultural context that this color stuff makes any sense again. It's all just what decisions have been made and what's been handed down and what's an accepted thought on it. But they are kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, they are. But regardless, when you look at this Hasbro ad for the Easy Bake Oven, you don't think of getting that for a boy. Mm-hmm. I mean, the little girl is all in pink with the red apron, which is a no.
I don't think of getting it for a girl either because, honestly, it's a friggin' light bulb in a box.
Oh, we have one. It's a terrible little device. Tatiana wanted the damn thing. We got it. It's horrible. It's like, you know what? Use the toaster oven.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When it all comes down to it, the purpose of the Easy Bake Oven is to teach little girls that cooking is what they should be doing. Am I incorrect on this, or am I?
Yeah, they're perpetuating some other stereotypes. And the fact of the matter is that men cook as much as women do. And when you think about cooking as a career, then you start looking at men as opposed to women. Your top chefs in the world are men. Now that's probably changing too, right? I hope so.
And the top chefs in the world are men, and they scream at people all the time.
Well, there's some
I've seen
truth
it on
to that.
TV. Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I never worked for a female chef. Never. There at the Brown Palace when I worked there, not a single female chef. I mean,
Well,
there were women that
Pink
worked
Palace.
there, but we had a head line cook that was a woman, but she got out of there. But there weren't that many women in the kitchen cooking.
Well, it's probably the reason that she probably got out of there was because of how badly her privacy had been violated. If she was a headline cook, they were bothering her and writing stories about her all the time. Or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, you're misunderstanding, but.
Okay.
Oh, good. Ian's back.
Okay, let's see if that goes better.
All right. Well, we beat the last story into the ground. I think we're done.
Okay.
So you want to move on to chivalry?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, these are all kind of connected, I suppose.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Ian, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, well, chivalry is one I've been wanting to do for a while, but I've been trying to work it in, and this felt like the best one to work it into.
Mm-hmm.
And this all comes up from a couple years ago. Me and my family were at scout camp, and I had just gone, they did a late night hike with the boys. I went with the boys, my wife stayed behind. We came back from the hike, and for whatever reason, we only had one folding chair with us, and I decided to use it. My wife, who had stayed behind the whole time and, was nice and rested, was giving me a hard time over, well, you should get up and let me have a chair. I'm like, I'm actually kind of tired. You've been resting this whole time. I'm going to sit. Well, one of the other people there mentions, well, you're not being very chivalrous. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, let's see. My wife is rested. She has no more need for the chair than I do. If anything, I, who just went on an extra hike, have more of a need for it because I should legitimately be more physically exhausted. So what is so chivalrous about me letting her have the chair at this point? And so, what does chivalry mean? And it's interesting because we romanticize the idea of chivalry. And if you look in most of the stuff I put up here, it does that. There's only one link that I found that actually got honest about the idea of chivalry. And that was this very last one here. Through, what is this? Right. The Medieval Knight talks about the knight.
Ugh.
And it talks about chivalry, but it finishes up talking about the more or less the truth behind it. Now, chivalry was a code where you, especially at this time, it was religious. So you made a code to value God, to be courteous to women, to be loyal to the king, to help the weak and stuff. But if you look, and like I said, it's romanticized. But this one actually gets to some of the more honest stuff. Now, it talks about knights were quite often not the ones who are inheriting the lands from the family. Because, if you were the firstborn, you'd generally stay behind and take care of the land. The knights are the ones that would go out and have to earn it all. So they would plunder the villages that they captured. They would defile and destroy the churches and other property. And the code of chivalry did not extend to the peasants. The weak was widely
they're
interpreted.
peasants.
Yeah, and that they were different. The weak were the noble women and children, not the common folk. The common folk were brutalized. The women were raped. You could get away with that and still say you were being chivalrous. Yeah, chivalrous. Sorry. So right there, it's like, okay, how is chivalry really that good of a thing? It still has a lot of the true problems that were there. I mean,
yeah.
So it's interesting the romantic idea we have of what being chivalrous is compared to a more honest idea of what it really was.
Well, yeah, but the idea of chivalry is tied into our culture, our whole culture of, our whole culture of and the ideal of marriage as well. The idea of chivalry is tied into that.
Right.
Because the idea of chivalry, the ideal of it is essentially Arthur and his knights. That's where a lot of our ideas about courtly love and whatnot came from.
Well,
yeah, the romantic idea of it.
Right. So I asked Jen about chivalry, and I wrote this down because I want to get her exact quote. She told me, "Fuck chivalry." That's an exact quote from my wife.
Okay.
She.
Go ahead.
I like that you had to write it down.
Yeah, because I wanted to get it exact. But, basically she thinks it's just utter bullshit. And really, you look at this is archaic, and it was written by Bronze Age morons, the same people that wrote the Bible.
Actually, I think you're I think you're incorrect. I think these morons were Iron Age morons.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, excuse me.
Yeah. I think it's
how far
vitally
we've
important. I think it's vitally important from an anthropological standpoint that we correctly identify what era our morons are from.
But,
Yeah.
like in the case of that chair, if I saw my wife had a more physical need for it than I did, I would have let her have it. At that point in time, I didn't see that she had more of a physical need for it. I did. And so it's like, why would I, if we're on equal footage and I have more of a need for it than she does, what benefits either one of us from me letting her have it? If she was pregnant, if she was injured, if she had gone on the hike and I didn't, it'd make more sense for me. Okay, you have a more need for it. I will give it to you.
Well,
But it's foolish for me to treat her as if she's weaker just because she's a woman, and that I have to go out of my way, to let her have certain comforts that don't really make sense as why she has a higher priority for them than I do.
Here's the thing is that we can completely disregard this idea of chivalry, and we can just bring in respect, right?
Right.
Respect the other person. But, there are certain norms in dating that may not necessarily be done because they're chivalrous, right? Like, the article talks about, men paying for the meal when they go out. Well, okay. But I think that we can look at that as a toss-up too.
That's another archaic idea because it's accepted that men are the breadwinner.
But we can change that to whoever asks who out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, we can deal with it that way.
I can go for that.
These things can be updated in a way that makes sense.
Right.
Well, and in a way that makes sense that's a little bit genderless. I mean, I'd go even so far, like let's say it's further along dating. It's not like the first date kind of thing. If two people are together and one of them makes $100,000 a year and the other makes $25,000 a year, I think it is chivalrous for the $100,000 a year maker to pay for dinner. I don't care what gender they are.
Right.
That's
yeah,
the
but now
thing.
that $100,000 a year maker is going to pay a little bit more tax, and so he may not be.
And he probably has higher.
Damn you, Obama.
That person probably has higher expenses too. So the other person might be in a better situation to buy the meal.
All right, I'm still saying. I guess it's my personal code, but that would be my expectation.
Opening the doors. The chivalrous idea is you open the door for a lady. I open doors for people that need it. I see an adult male with pushing a stroller. I'm going to open the door for the guy.
I open the door. Open for anybody. I open the door, and if somebody's walking up close behind me, I let them go through the door. Right, I don't care whether they're male, female, elderly, carrying a ton of stuff, or just happen to be walking along. Right. I open the door because I think that's the thing to do.
Whoever gets to the door first should open the thing.
Well, but like I said, I've had cases, especially knowing what it's like to be pushing a stroller and stuff, where I've helped the guy who might not necessarily even been in front of me, but I'll go and hold the door open for him and say, you need the help. It's not because of anything more than he needs the actual help. And
this is totally an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. This is Larry David standing there waiting for a woman to open the door because she got there first.
Okay. So here's my thought. Nobody open the door. Just go right through it. You're going to need a good run up to get through it, but that's tempered glass. You're not going to get cut up too badly.
You know what?
It's designed to shatter.
You know what? You got a good point. All doors should be automatic so that we don't have this problem. Doors should open themselves. This whole antiquated idea that we should have to open a door in the first place, that's ridiculous.
You are putting you're putting words in my crazy mouth. Don't do that.
Let us all be lazy, damn it. But yeah, so a lot of the ideas of chivalry should be adjusted to be just polite. There are polite, normal things that, hey, it's not going to hurt me to go the extra mile for anyone, no matter what sex they are, no matter age, any of that. It's just being polite. And then to expect that in return should not be too much to ask. So
right.
It's just
the golden rule. If Jesus were to come back today, instead of do unto others, he'd probably just be like, look, just don't be a dick and help out where you can.
That's right. Don't be a dick.
The idea of chivalry, it still comes up. People still seem obsessed with it and really romanticize the whole thing and take it to it's a different level than it needs to be. It's like it gets absurd, and I think it adds to some of the stuff we've been talking about with the war on men and such. Is by having this romanticized idea of chivalry out there, it makes people more likely to say, "Oh, we have to treat the genders differently." Women have to be women in these preconceived ideas.
So here's my thought: if people are going to be following the chivalrous code, quit cherry picking. and do the whole thing. I'm expecting them to have lands. I'm expecting them to keep their horses in good order. I'm expecting them to keep their armor in good order. I'm expecting squires. And their damn squires can open the door.
And that, it makes you think, remember the times when, men were men and sheep were scared.
That still happens in Wyoming.
There goes our Wyoming listener.
Yeah. Bye. Our Oklahoma listener, too.
There goes our Wyoming listener nodding his head. Yep.
I'll tell you, I mean, just going over this stuff, it does make me a little, I guess maybe grateful that, all of these things are, again, part of my relationship. It's just kind of nice having that gender preconceived notions kind of removed from it. Again, I feel like I wouldn't say fuck chivalry myself. I think I would just personally want it, again, more of that equality kind of thing. If everybody acted this way towards everybody else and, just took an extra half a second out to be nice to people, well, that sounds good. It sounds like a good place.
Yeah.
And does that or does that not just sum up right there, like Jesus' whole message? Wouldn't it be nice if people were nice to each other for a change?
Yeah.
I do have to take issue with this one article you've got in here, Ian, the ThinkQuest library one.
Okay.
It's talking about armor and weapons, and it said that the sword weighed 32 pounds. There's no frigging way in hell that a sword would weigh 32 pounds. I possess swords. They do not weigh over 10 pounds.
I possess swords
Well,
as
I thought a claymore only weighed about 10 pounds.
Yeah. So the Viking sword that they've got pictured in there, that's about a 6 to 7 pound sword at most.
Well, it had a granite hilt.
Even with older technology.
Yeah, I agree. That does sound a bit.
And older technology, I'm talking about older alloys of metal.
Right. No, I agree. That does sound rather heavy. There are swords that are that heavy, I know for a fact, but they weren't common. They
also weren't designed to be picked up.
Yeah. How would you wield it? I mean, like I say, even a claymore, like one of the biggest swords around, was 5 to 10 pounds.
Yeah.
32 definitely. I'd like to know where they got that figure. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, it's just a mistype.
But that's the one I
where they got it from? They probably mistranslated the damn player's handbook. We misread the player's handbook, and because some of the stuff in here looks like it's good information, some of it looks like it's recycled D&D information.
You wait a second. It's true because look at that. Right after the 32 pounds, it says 2d6.
I picked this one because it's the only one I could find that de-romanticized the idea of chivalry.
I do like the fact that they talk about the change in armor and the fact that the chainmail was heavy, uncomfortable, and difficult to move in, whereas the plate armor was hot, uncomfortable, and heavy to wear. So apparently the plate armor is better winter wear than the chainmail is.
Well, and usually you had chain underplate on top of it, so.
Oh, yeah.
So, like anything we find, do your own research beyond it.
No, don't. On second thought, listen, we're right on this, and chivalry has to go, and in replacement, we're just going to be nice to each other.
But the site itself, we link to, may be inaccurate in parts. Go beyond us.
In parts?
I think that's, they definitely have some stuff right.
Listen, here's the thing, is if they've gotten this far, especially into this podcast, they're already Googling this stuff to figure out where we went wrong.
That's true.
They already know.
So if you know the truth about the weight of the swords and what they should be, feel free to tell us off. If the knights actually did run around with 32-pound swords, which will surprise us completely, you have evidence, send it our way.
Doesn't have to be particularly good evidence either, clearly.
I can.
I saw it on the internet.
That's right.
I can weigh my blades and get an average for you if you would like. I believe my longsword, which does not have a historical analog, but I believe my longsword weighs about 6 pounds, 5 to 6 pounds.
All right.
And that seems light just for, going to Renfest and wearing a sword one day. It knocked my back completely out of whack having that on one side of my hip.
Right, but you wore it on one side all day long.
Yeah, and eventually, eventually that's gonna wear on you. It's not the weight initially. Initially, the weight is not going to be a problem. It's just over time, and the way it's going to change how you walk is going to knock your back out. You would actually probably been better off. Sorry, go ahead.
I just said I thought it was because I was getting old.
I think it was probably a change in the way you were walking.
Yeah.
You know, if you're wearing a sword on the hip, you are probably going to be swinging your left leg a little bit differently in order to avoid the way that the sword scabbard is swinging as you walk. And as that happens over time, you're going to knock your back out of whack.
Right.
You'd actually be better off with a sword for all day wear. You'd be better off with a back scabbard because that distributes the weight more evenly and everything else. This got a little bit too needlessly nerdishly technical, didn't it?
Yeah. You're also not supposed to drag the right leg as you walk. That's bad. Walk like this. All right.
There, Castle.
Are we done?
Yeah,
I think we're done with chivalry.
All right. So, before we go on to this other update, we talked about the birds and the cuckoos and how they were able to teach the code to their young, so that so the reason that works is that the gestational period is longer of those birds. And so they lay the eggs and they teach it as soon as they lay the eggs. And when the invader comes, they lay them later. So the code is already taught by then.
Okay.
And
that makes perfect sense.
So they don't learn the code. And the other one, the Bigfoot DNA, which we pretty much, nailed. We missed some technical stuff. The best, review of that I've heard is on Monster Talk. And so if you're interested in more of that and you don't already listen to Monster Talk, that's a good one to talk to. They talk to a guy who does a lot of, DNA research and stuff like that and is on a lot of the boards in the magazines. And one of the things he said is listen, I'm on most of the boards of the reputable, journals that would publish this, and I don't know anything about it. And I would probably have been asked to review the data if it was being submitted to any of those journals, or at least I would have heard that it was being, looked at by another peer reviewer. And so it was kind of telling that somebody who's, on the board of these journals hasn't heard anything about this research. And the other thing is that, this woman is also one of the ones that claims that, she's got Yetis in her backyard and that she can't take pictures of them because they're too shy. And she's been promising this DNA research for 5 years now. So there's some questions as to whether or not we'll ever see it. So check out Monster Talk. So they covered that well. And our next update is to a story that we did on podcast 38, where a psychic had called a Texas Police Department and told them that there was a house that they saw clairvoyantly, a house with a mass grave and children in it and all this, and explained it, to these police officers, and they followed up the lead and went into this person's house and and they, I think even the FBI got involved at some point. I don't remember that for sure, but anyway, so it was this big debacle. And so the people that, who were the victims of this are suing the police department and the psychic who did this. Oh yes, and the FBI was involved, but they're suing the sheriff's office and the psychic who gave the tip. Ben Radford goes as far as to call it a hoax. I think that would imply malice intent. Like they knew that for sure that what they were saying wasn't true. I don't know that that's the case, right? But maybe we'll find out in this lawsuit. The psychic went by the name of Angel, who I guess they currently don't actually have the actual identity of the psychic yet. So that's one of the things that they're going to have to figure out for this to go on. But they have decided to go ahead and sue. So we'll see what happens with that. That should be interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. Because on one hand, if the psychic did it maliciously and knew for some reason that grave wasn't there and they just called the police to see what would happen, I think that would be malicious. I
would agree with you that would be malicious.
But I kind of think, I don't know for sure, that this person probably believed what they were saying. But I don't have any way to put an agenda onto the psychic at this point. So I don't know where this suit can go. I mean, if they can prove malicious intent on the part of the psychic, I think that's going to be kind of difficult. But there's another question. The officer said that they had to respond to every claim that was made. So they got a tip should they have gone, well, but it was from a psychic. She has no actual evidence. She hasn't seen anything physically. Do we disregard it? I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. Certainly,
you're getting into those issues of if someone truly believes something, are they lying? Even if, it's very demonstrable that they're wrong, and you can take this on the religion track, right? If, you can say, oh, you don't really believe that. But if they claim they do, then they do. And are they lying to themselves? And does it matter? I mean, it gets into some really thorny questions. I'm actually a little surprised that you're being so generous with them, because part of me would be like, yeah, let's go ahead and get these people. They're causing harm. They're spending money, basically, with the police resources for foolishness. And even if they truly believe in their own psychic abilities, I mean, they're being willfully ignorant, right? They know on some level or another, even if they're not prepared to say it out loud, that they're BS. They know that their predictions haven't won out. They know that, when they're doing this stuff, that it's not real.
Yeah,
right?
Do they know that though? I mean, that's what they're gonna have to prove.
I suppose.
I don't know. I'm struggling with this one because, I mean, I don't know. Is it Pendulette that says that he doesn't believe there's a God, and he also doesn't believe that anybody else actually believes it? I mean, we're kind of getting into a trap, It's like, yes, I don't believe that somebody can be psychic. I don't believe that it's been demonstrated, but because it hasn't been demonstrated, should the police have actually followed up that tip?
I suppose they had to follow up the tip because, like you say, you don't always know all of the information on something like that. And it would be worse if it turned out to be a legitimate tip that you didn't follow up, and then you'd have to answer the question. You knew 3 months ago that there were bodies here. At least that's how it would be phrased in the media. Why didn't you ever investigate it if you'd heard this?
Right, but how would you follow up
like
the
you say,
tip?
when you have those faith healers, and this goes into a lot of the discussions we have on this program. If you believe that praying over somebody will heal them, and that you shouldn't go to a doctor because you honestly believe your health, the person's health is controlled by prayer and God's will and stuff like that, are you, do you have a right to that belief, or are you morally and lawfully culpable? I would say you're culpable. And it doesn't matter that you believed it and it turned out I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting point, and I think once you head down that road, you could go really, really far with it.
Well, that's interesting because when I look at those faith healers, I want to jail them all. Mm-hmm. And because in cases specifically where they're harming children. And so if I apply that here, the psychic is negligent and is culpable and should have to pay for this investigation.
Right, regardless of whether or not the belief was sincere. I think what we're coming down to is the sincerity of the belief at all relevant? And I don't know. I mean, I would, again, I'm with you. I would say off the top of my head, regardless of what they thought they believed or not, it's irrelevant. They're responsible. But boy, does that open up a floodgate of stuff.
That is a can of worms.
The same thinking could be applied in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it seems to me that a tip that you give to the police should in some way be actionable. It's like, I saw a bloody shovel on the back porch, right? Well, how'd you know it was blood? Well, it was red. Could it have been paint? Well, maybe.
Well, but, the tip you give to the police should be actionable. And there is a reason why they get information from you when you call a 911 call in.
Right.
What I'm curious about is why they were not able to get such information when this call came in.
Yeah, it seems like the police didn't really. Well, I don't know. But if they have the records, I guess I don't know. We don't know. But they called in. The FBI got involved in this. This was not cheap.
Right, and we, the taxpayers, are ultimately the ones paying for the services. So, yeah, but like you say, at the same time, if somebody called up and they were right on and, they simply didn't divulge, maybe because they themselves would have been, the Fifth Amendment kind of stuff.
Right.
If they had said something, they may have been endangering themselves, or they may have been pointing to themselves as being a guilty party, and you'd rather get the information, and if they say, oh, I'm psychic, all right, whatever. I watch enough episodes of Psych and stuff like that to enjoy it. I've actually been reviewing some old X-Files and stuff like that. What a fun series. But, most of the time in those things, it turns out it's somebody with, an agenda or they're misinterpreting things or whatever. Anyway, back to reality.
Right.
The police have to follow up on any kind of a lead that makes sense.
Even from a psychic, does it make sense if you say, well, I saw it clairvoyantly?
If you admit right out that that's the only evidence you have is psychic evidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say no, that's not real evidence. That's nothing real to work with.
There is no...
I don't know what you would do if you were the cop and, it turns out, like I said, if this one had turned out to be true based on, something else, obviously. I'm not trying to suggest that it did come in from any kind of psychic ability, but, I guess maybe I'm kind of thinking along the lines of sometimes people who believe that they are psychic believe that because coincidences happen and they falsely, or incorrectly, I should say, attribute knowledge to a psychic power where it really isn't. We've done that on shows before where we talked about, the firemen going into this house and calling for everyone to get the hell out of there, and a minute later the floor collapsed. And it was because instinctually he had taken in a lot of information, and although he could not point to why he knew that, he did know it, right? We've talked about that on here before. So again, if somebody attributes them putting together a whole bunch of little pieces of information into a claim, and then someone says, how do you know that? And they can't say, well, the floor was hot and it wasn't enough fire. You know what I'm saying? Whatever led them to that correct conclusion that was in part unconscious or filtered or whatever by their brain, then that could still be potentially good information.
Well, so you've just muddied the waters. You've muddied the waters. This is not a clear-cut situation. it's a difficult one. Yeah. So am I being too generous? I don't know.
That this person is bullshit and they knew they were bullshit and they did it for bullshit reasons. I mean, that person, I'd like to see strung up by their thumbs.
Yes. I totally
how you
agree.
prove that? I don't know that answer.
Yeah, so this will be an interesting one to actually see what happens. Am I being too generous? I don't know. Maybe.
Now, my thought is, if this person who did this hoax, this prank, if it was done for malicious reasons and it was because they had something against that person, that's awesome.
Oh, really?
No.
So we'll see what happens. I'm torn on the whole situation because, certainly it costs a lot of money. And I think it's questionable whether they should have, pursued it. Maybe they have to. Maybe they don't have a choice. But should we hold the psychic responsible for getting it wrong? Maybe. There are certain times when I think that would be a good idea. Maybe they'd think twice about making shit up.
Psychic malpractice insurance.
Yeah. You know what?
That could be a field.
I bet we can sell it right next to our pet insurance.
Yep. Rapture pet insurance.
Speaking of which, if you haven't bought your Rapture insurance, it's probably a little late to get a policy.
We only have less than 2 weeks before the Mayan calendar ends. We're all doomed.
I think if you get your premiums in, I think they'll insure you.
Yeah, they'll take your money. Absolutely.
Might as well. It's a sure bet.
Right, and if this apocalypse doesn't get you, maybe the next one will.
Yeah. I know I'll believe even more fervently in the next apocalypse prediction if this one does not.
Exactly,
that's
right?
Human nature.
Right.
Are we doing another podcast before the end of the world, or is this it?
We'll talk about it. I'm not sure. Certainly, we won't be doing one on the 24th, so we will have to do it before, after, or in between somewhere. I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out. So we could be gone potentially till our next record date would be the 31st.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. No.
And if the Mayans were right.
No, the 24th, no. Not the 31st, the 7th.
Yeah.
Yes, so if the Mayans are right, Or actually, we shouldn't say that because the Mayans didn't actually predict it.
That
If
is very
the
true.
The
yokel,
idiots that are predicting it.
yeah, the Mayans,
Well said.
yeah, the Mayans don't believe it. So,
I guess we'd call them the aluminum age idiots to wrap the show
Aluminum
up in a
age
nice
idiots,
bundle.
yes.
Is that right?
yeah, well, the tinfoil hat age idiots. So I don't know what's going to happen. It could be January 7th could be our next record date. I'd like to try and squeeze something in there in between there. Maybe I can put something together. We can find a time, but certainly, the 24th we will not be recording.
Okay.
But maybe
You got
Sunday
big
the
Christmas
23rd.
plans?
Yep.
Are you going to midnight mass or?
Oh man, I forgot about midnight mass. The kids are going to be so upset, but I think I better just put it off and better podcast instead. All right, we can talk about this off the air. Do we have anything else?
I
I
don't.
think that's it. If we don't talk to you, everybody have a happy holiday or
Absolutely.
however you choose to celebrate, if you choose to celebrate, and a great new year.
All right.
You know.
Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Amateur Skeptics Podcast. For more information about the Amateur Skeptics, go to amateurskeptics.com. To send us feedback, suggestions, or big flaming insults, feel free to contact us at WTF@amateurskeptics.com. Other contact information can be found on our website.
You can leave a voicemail for the Amateur Skeptics Podcast at 720-295-7785. Music for this podcast was provided by OFM. To find out more about OFM, go to myspace.com/OFMHQ. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons, No Derivatives 3.5 license. Thank you for listening to the Amateur Skeptics Podcast.
Amateur Skeptics website, Facebook, and podcast album art is provided by and copyright Shadow Knight Digital Portraiture. Larger prints or custom pieces are available upon request.